So Andrew Scheer is promising to cut 25% from Canada's foreign aid budget. He's arguing that Canada supports rich countries who don't need the money and that he can save over $2.2 billion. Now, Canada does spend $6 billion a year on foreign aid, but that's still far less than the international obligation that Canada has signed onto. Countries like Sweden and the UK spend a lot more. And the Trudeau government spends less of our GDP on aid than the Harper government. Still, does Mr. Scheer have a good idea, or is it a retreat toward isolationism? Let's find out. Joining me now is Bob Rae, the former leader of the Liberal Party, Peter MacKay, the co-founder of the Modern Conservative Party, and Gilles Duceppe, the former leader of the Bloc, Quebecois. Thanks for being here, gentlemen. Peter MacKay, let me start with you. Is it a good thing for Canada to cut 25% of its foreign aid?
I think any incoming government is going to look at foreign aid, whatever the percentage might be, but certainly the argument that countries like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea are receiving money in foreign aid, I think surprised a lot of Canadians. So whether the number is 25% or not, a realignment is not a bad idea. I also believe that he has said specifically $700 million will be redirected to those countries most in need. And that would include some of those traditional recipients, Mali, Tanzania, Afghanistan, for programs for kids in war zones, conflict zones. So I think, again, everybody would be on board with that. The numbers that were highest in terms of the support for cutting back on foreign aid or reallocating for other purposes were in Quebec, interestingly enough. And so it's a conversation that should happen. It's a conversation, I think, that has happened every time a new government had come to office. And I don't think Canadians want to see their money going to support terrorism. It's always easy for socialists in particular to say we're willing to spend more of other people's money.
Now, I don't know what money's going to support terrorism, to be frank. I've never seen that. Bob Rae, your reaction to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a ridiculous comment. No one's advocating putting money towards terrorism. I think the
UNRWA and Hamas is what I'm referring to, Bob.
Well, nobody's directing money at Hamas. That's nonsense. The issue is no, it is nonsense. But if I can just finish, I didn't interrupt you. I think it's too bad for me that we can't get a broader consensus in the country on what we should be doing so that we can plan for more than 3 or 4 years at a time on where our foreign assistance is going to be going and how consistent to make it. I think that on foreign assistance, and I would even say on defense, I think we need to have a longer term perspective on what it's going to take. Whoever forms a government needs to understand that a 25% cut in foreign assistance is going to have a dramatic impact on where Canada is in the world and where aid is going to be going. It involves a lot of cooperation with a lot of other countries in order to be effective. You've got to be able to plan things out. As things now stand, Canada is already spending less in relationship to our GDP than we should be. It's something that needs to be addressed, in my opinion. Of course, if you tell Canadians, look, we're giving all this money to Russia and China, not true. We're doing all this other stuff, not true. Let's stop doing that, let's do this. People will say, oh yeah, there's no constituency out there that's voting for foreign assistance. This is about our international obligations and where we need to be as a country. And I don't think we need to have phony pitches to isolationism and no, let's bring the money home kind of arguments, when the fact is we need as a country to be more resolute in our commitments overseas, whether it's in what we're doing with the UN militarily, what we're doing in terms of defense with NATO, what we're doing in terms of foreign assistance. It all goes together, and we need to think of it that way.
Gilles Duceppe, what do you make of this pitch that I guess the aid is being wasted? What's your view?
I think that was a bad proposal by Scheer. The target, the international target, is supposed to be 0.7% of the GDP. Under Mulroney, it was at 0.43. Chrétien reduced that to 0.23. Under Harper, it was at 0.31, and under Trudeau is at 0.28. So we're far away from what Mulroney did, and far away from the target. And when we take the example of Iran, the money in Iran is given to an organization in charge of checking if they apply or not the nuclear agreement they signed in Paris. So I think it's important to check that. And we have to see one by one, of course, but not to reduce, but trying to do better than we're doing now.
Mr. MacKay, let me just respond to that. Money that went to Russia was to support the LGBTQ community who's under fire there. In Iran, it was to support the nuclear inspectors. Like, is that not part of Canada's role? I'm intrigued. What do you think?
I think so.
Well, it depends on the program. It depends very much on the program. Absolutely, it does. In those countries and those particular programs in particular, there's nothing wrong with reviewing them. There's other programs, of course, in other countries that we can take a look at. But I certainly agree that we need to continue to move towards a more ethical and more transparent review of foreign aid. And I also believe, quite frankly, that we should be doing the same with our NATO commitments. But when it comes to the decision of where the money goes, we need to ensure that it's getting to the actual recipient. And I think that that's what Andrew Scheer is focusing in on. He's also talked about the necessity to have Canadian foreign aid go through these programs in a way that is going to optimize the outcomes. So whether it's education, health, Afghanistan is a good example of that, where we built schools, where we eradicated polio, where we actually made a significant difference in the lives of children. So promoting democracy, promoting health, education, absolutely, we should be doing more of that.
All right, last word. Although he is saying there's going to be a 25% cut. Mr. Ray.
Well, I was just going to say, you can't do that and talk about a 25% cut. I think Peter knows as well as anybody that sure, any government's going to look at what's going. You want to make sure it's going to the right recipients. Absolutely correct. I mean, Andrew, when he did his press conference, said we don't want to be sending money to Italy. We gave money to earthquake victims in Italy. Is that not? Are these not acts of solidarity that we're going to perform? You cannot do this with a 25% cut. That would take the per capita number that we have in relationship to GDP would take us down to below 0.2%. Be the lowest among any OECD country. It's ludicrous for us to be looking at it that way. Let's take some of the partisanship out of foreign assistance. It's very important to do that.
All right, gents, I got to leave it there. There's lots on this, and we'll pick up more of it in the program. Bob Ray, Gilles, Duceppe, and Peter MacKay, always a pleasure to have you three gentlemen on the program.